You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast, episode number 130. Screenwriting is the toughest part of the whole racket, the least understood and the least noticed. Frank Capra.
Broadcasting from a dark, windowless room in Hollywood, when we really should be working on that next draft. It's the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast, showing you the craft and business of screenwriting while teaching you how to make your screenplay bulletproof. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by Bulletproof Script Coverage. Now, unlike other script coverage services, Bulletproof Script Coverage actually focuses on the kind of project you are and the goals of the project you are. So we actually break it down by three categories: micro budget, indie film market, and studio film. There's no reason to get coverage from a reader that's used to reading tentpole movies when your movie's going to be done for $100,000. And we wanted to focus on that at Bulletproof Script Coverage. Our readers have worked with Marvel Studios, CAA, WME, NBC, HBO, Disney, Scott Free, Warner Brothers, The Blacklist, and many, many more. So if you need your screenplay or TV script covered by professional readers, head on over to covermyscreenplay.com. And today's show is also sponsored by Indie Film Hustle's Filmmaker Process. We provide screenwriters with professional services to get their films or series packaged, funded, finished, and distributed. Some of the services we offer are pitch deck creation, film budgets and schedules, domestic and international sales estimates, legal contract templates, and consulting. If you're looking to package a screenplay or project, Filmmaker Process can help. Head over to www.filmmakerprocess.com. Well, guys, today on the show, we have Felicity Wren. Now, Felicity works at the great organization called ISA, who helps screenwriters on their path, do contests, do so many different things. But Felicity and I really got into the weeds in this conversation, not only about how to market yourself, market your screenplay, but this is kind of a master class on what to do and what not to do as a screenwriter trying to build a career, trying to look at the long game. All of these little things that just came up in our conversation, it is just full of gold nuggets and knowledge bombs all over the place. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Felicity Wren. I'd like to welcome to the show Felicity Wren. How are you doing, Felicity?
I'm really good. Thank you, Alex. Really good indeed.
So thank you for coming on the show. I've been a big fan of what you guys do over at ICA for a long time. And I thought it would be appropriate to have you come on the show to talk about marketing, because it's something that writers generally don't think about, career building and how to actually try to pitch your story, how to get through all these gatekeepers, all these kind of things. So I want to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into marketing, because it is unfortunately a necessity in today's world. You just can't write the great American screenplay and hope that the gods from Mount Hollywood show up and you're like, you now shall write, here's $3 million, this way to the Hollywood Hills. Like that's not a thing. But a lot of screenwriters, and I know that you know this, think that's the thing. And it's not this, it's another skill set now that we have to talk about, which is marketing. But before we get into that, how did you get into this business? This ridiculous business that is the Hollywood industry.
Yeah, we were just talking about the fact that it's a bit of an abusive relationship. So, yeah. Well, why on earth? Well, I kind of, I'm from the UK originally. I think my accent does give it away, just in case anyone was wondering where it's from. It's not Australia, it is the UK. I
was going to pinpoint South Africa. I was really outside South Africa, obviously.
Obviously, makes perfect sense. So I always loved acting. And then I realized that it's actually so difficult because you're always waiting to be picked. So I thought, what could I do to change that? So the guy I was seeing, who became my husband at the time, we started a theatre company, and we actually found ourselves in a little theatre, and we started working with creative people and people who were starting out in their career. And that was 20 years ago, and I still run that little venue in London. And 11 years ago, I was thinking, surely there's more to life than this. Because I think, I don't know if everyone feels the same, but I think that even genetically, it says every 7 years you become a completely new person. Every cell in your body is renewed. So I feel like if you're having a lovely life, or even if you're not having a lovely life, that's maybe a moment for you to think, what else could I do with myself? And so you always have that Hollywood dream, much as you were saying earlier about the writers going, someone will discover me. I thought I could come to Hollywood.
Discover my genius is what I like to say. It's like, why hasn't Hollywood discovered my genius? Obviously. And why hasn't Kevin Feige called me up to direct the next Avengers? I don't understand. Can you explain it to me, Felicity?
But the reason is you do need to be there. It's one of those things to kind of like, oh, not so much anymore, but it used to feel like that. So I thought, well, Hollywood, just really needs a female British actress who looks a bit like Meryl Streep's daughter that she didn't have, who hasn't had any work done. So that's my thinking. Of course, very sensible.
Obviously.
Not at all unrealistic.
Sure.
So,
and the thing is, isn't it funny? Because we were talking about the pecking order of abuse in Hollywood, and actors get the worst of the stick. They have no control. They're commodities in the process. Writers are right next door to them. They have a little bit more, just a slight bit more power and control. And then probably directors, filmmakers, and then all the technical aspects of things. But I mean, and this is something I've said before on the show is, to get into this business, you have to be a slightly bit insane, because it is not a business that makes any sense of any sort whatsoever. I mean, because I've been in the business world and I've been in the film industry, and this is the only business in the world where you could spend $5 million and have a worthless product at the end of it. I mean, am I wrong? Like you can spend $5 million overselling, overbuilding a house with marble and this, and it's in the wrong neighborhood, in the wrong location. Yet you still have a house with some value. Might not be the full value of what you spent, but there's value there. You literally can have something that is worthless and spend $5 million if you don't know what you're doing in this business. And how it's insane. And and by the way, you can't even tell what money you're getting. If you put $5 million in, you're like, I think we're going to get 5 to 10 back. Maybe. What world is that a business?
It's not a business. And the thing about that, I always feel as well, if you kind of were in the business world, you can think, I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm going to serve my apprenticeship. I'm going to work my way up, and someone's going to notice how good I am. And I've been here for 10 years, and then it's going to mean something. And it's like, it doesn't, none of those rules apply. I think there is a kind of sense that maybe for an actor, you don't have to audition anymore. Although Viola Davis was talking about the fact that she still had to. I think that's changed a bit with recently, but it was disgusting that she used to. There's racism in effect right there.
Jesus Christ, of course.
But yeah,
I mean,
but at least here, even if you're doing really well and you're thinking, okay, I'm doing really great. If you do a bum project, then you go to movie jail and you're back where you started.
It's insane. The old joke is, how do you make millions in the film industry? You start with billions. So,
oh my God!
But it's the truth. How do you make millions in the business? You start with billions. But it's true. I mean, and I'm kind of spotlighting and poking fun of our industry because it's insane. Obviously, someone's making money. Generally, it's not the artist, and that's a whole other conversation. Generally, it's not the artist, but there is a business somewhat in there. But at the independent level and things like that, it's so hard to generate any real revenue, especially in today's marketplace. And for screenwriters trying to sell a script, I mean, when I was coming up in the 90s, we were still in the boom of the spec script. It was kind of tailing off the spec script boom of the 80s where Shane Black and Joe Esterhaus, they were like getting, I mean, I think I read somewhere Joe Esterhaus made $20 million on films that never were produced. Never were produced. I mean, he did produce he did a couple really good movies.
Yes.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It wasn't like an anomaly. He was a really good writer, and still is a really good writer. But that was kind of tailing off in the 90s, and there wasn't nearly as much competition, and there wasn't nearly as much information about. I mean, I think, when did Sid Field's book come out? Like,
oh my God, does that Save the Cat?
No. Sid Field's was the basically the first book on like screen format. It was all about screenwriting format. I think it was in the 90s. I think it was in the mid 90s. I know Save the Cat came out in the late 90s. But there wasn't there wasn't a lot of information yet, so the competition wasn't as fierce. But today, everybody's a screenwriter. Everyone's a director. Because there's so much more information about our industry. So, I mean, how do we cut through as a writer in today's world, in your opinion?
Well, you have to know your voice. I think that's the thing, is like more than anything is you have to really kind of like drill into, I mean, obviously it worked really well for me being Meryl Streep's daughter. She didn't realize she had. That's my benefit. But I think really understanding what you bring to a piece of work, to your work, to the industry, and really then making the most of that and using everything that you have, so that you can understand that if there's a big push right now for Latina writers, then if you're Latina, go for it. Don't go like, I want to be seen just because my writing is just like this. No, absolutely. Just use everything you can. I think you should start with the very beginning. Understanding yourself, looking at the movies that touch you. Why do they touch you? What is it about them? What the stories they keep telling will probably tell you a lot about your own pressure points. Because I feel like writing itself is really therapy, isn't it? I mean, that's what writers are doing. They're just working out what's going on inside them on the page. So if you look at other movies that really touch you, I think you'll get a bit of a clue as to what's really going on with you. Then really understanding those ideas and working to really hone them and find your way of presenting them that is different from other things you've seen, but the same, because that's the other thing. You don't want to be too crazy, because people want things that have already made money. But I think that's going to be the first point, is understanding who you are, your voice, getting really clear about it, the stories you want to tell, the themes that you have that are important to you, and then start writing. I think the idea that you just need one great script is a lie. I know this, I think, again, that's still with that whole thing about, I think there've been like one or two stories and where people have been swooped in and kind of like, it was my first script. It was my first acting role.
Diablo Cody is a perfect example of that with Juno. She got the Oscar and all that stuff. And it was like, it was my first script. And she had been writing for years. And that's what people don't understand. She'd been writing. She'd been a prolific writer before she did her first screenplay. But I always tell screenwriters and filmmakers as well that the only thing you have going for you is your secret sauce. That thing that is unique to you. Like, there can't be another Quentin Tarantino, because he's got them. He's cornered the market on Quentin Tarantino. Like, Aaron Sorkin has cornered the market on being Aaron Sorkin. Like, there's no one who's going to be able to do that. No one's going to be able to be another Alex Ferrari or another Felicity. Like, we have our thing that is ours, that gift, that voice, our experiences. It is so unique to us. And I think once writers understand, all successful writers do this, all of them, across all mediums, are the ones who tap into that makes them special. The guy or the gal who is copying or trying to imitate, and by the way, and I'd love to hear your thought, we all do that. We all start imitating, because that's how we learn. From filmmaking and screenwriting, we start, we read the Shane Black scripts, we read the Tarantino scripts, we're like, we got to write script. Like, the moment you sit down to try to write dialogue like Tarantino, you realize, oh, this is not possible, because it's just something inside it. Like, when you start writing Sorkin dialogue, you go, I can't get the beats that he's doing, or Mamet. Like, you can't, because it's theirs. You could try to go down that road, but I think once you start tapping into that well inside of you is when the magic start happening. Do you agree?
I totally agree with that. And I feel, because of the things you said at the beginning, is there's no guarantee about really being in this business. So you should do it for the love of it. So if you really love sitting down, writing, getting these stories out, thinking about your characters, exploring where they might go, then at least you'll have the pleasure of that. regardless of what happens. I mean, of course, you want something to happen, and you aspire for that. And there are things you can do to put yourself out there so that more people know about you. I think you have to be brave, understand what your ideas are, and then don't be afraid to share them, because actually people want to hear about you. I think this idea that only some stories matter is false. All stories matter. We're all human beings on this planet, trying to get through, trying to make ends meet, trying to cope with heartbreak and joy. All the gamut of emotions. But the way we connect is through story and through understanding and really having compassion and empathy with another person. And you don't know. I always say to my writers, I'm like, you don't know what that one story that you've written, that one line, that one moment, that one scene will do for someone else who either reads it or watches it, and suddenly they feel seen. And that should be enough for you to sit down and go like, I'm going to do it for that. I'm going to do it for one person, and then I feel better, then that's enough. And then from there, of course, we want to make money. But if you start from that, I think very sweet, unique place.
Now, are you telling me then that you shouldn't get into this business for the money? Is that what you're trying to say? I mean, I got into this to be rich, obviously. So why? It hasn't happened yet, but that's why I started, obviously, because this is the place to make money. I mean, everyone makes money in this business. I kid, but it's the truth. So many writers and filmmakers come into this business like, I'm going to be rich. It's like, hey, he's going to be raining Benjamins all day, because you read the stories and you hear the press that Hollywood does. I've always said that Hollywood is extremely good at the sizzle, but sucks at the steak. And they sell the Hollywood dream so beautiful. They've been selling the Hollywood dream since the 1920s, since Chaplin jumped out, or the Keystone Cops were running around. They were selling the Hollywood dream. And I always tell people who haven't been to LA, I go, the perfect example or analogy for Hollywood is this. It's the Oscars. When you go down to Hollywood Boulevard on Oscar night, my God, it looks amazing, doesn't it? Oh, it looks great on television. It's great. Then your family flies into LA and they're like, hey, I want to go down to Hollywood Boulevard at the Chinese Theater. I'm like, you don't want to do that. No, it's great. No, it's great. I want to go see it. I'm like, you don't want to do that. So I did the same thing when I first got here with a friend of mine who lived here before I moved here. And I went to downtown and I went to Hollywood Boulevard, and we parked where Madame Tussauds is now. That was an empty parking lot back then. And I parked, and the moment we got out, there was a woman who walked by, and she's just like, welcome to Hollywood. And she lifted up and flashed us. And I was like, my wife and I were just like, wow. And my friend goes, welcome to Hollywood. And we walked down the street, and my wife was clinching to me because it was not, I'm like, oh my, and the farther you will get away from the Dolby Theater, it gets shadier and shadier and shadier. And that is it looks almost like a cesspool other than that little block. Am I wrong? I mean, and that's a perfect analogy for Hollywood, because it shows you on the screen, it's so pretty. But the second the show is over, they pull up the red carpet and it's like needles in the in the gutters. It's insane.
Yeah, that corner is particularly ugly as well when the red carpet has gone. But it literally from above, when you've got the seats down and you can't see the street, there is absolutely nothing there. And then you're just accosted by people out of work, poor actors dressed as Disney characters trying to take their photo with you. And then it just gets further down to it's really stripper attire. The shops further down. But it is the absolute opposite of what you think. There is no paved with gold in Hollywood. That is not true.
It's a boulevard of broken dreams. That's damn sure. I mean, and it's as cliche as that is. Once you're here, I've been here for over a decade. And when I got here, the streets were paved for gold for me. I was like, oh my God, look, there's Warner Brothers. Oh, look, there's Disney. Oh, look, there's a post house. I was so excited just to be in the business. About a year or two in, you're just like, oh, yeah, this is the reality. Okay, this is how this game is played now. But at first you don't. And that's one of the reasons why I even do what I do, is because I want to warn people trying to get into this business. Look, I'm not saying don't follow your dreams, but you got to be prepared for what's coming. And most people aren't. Most people are not prepared for that. I always say the punch. We're all going to get punched. We all get punched throughout our careers, no matter who you are. If you're Steven Spielberg, we all get punched by this business. And occasionally You learn how to avoid the punch. You learn how to duck. You learn how to take the hit a little bit easier. But if you don't know that there's a fight. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. You're going to get knocked out in the first one. And so how many writers have you run into who the first time that punch comes, whatever that punch might be, they're out for the count and they just like, I'm out. I don't want to do this because they weren't prepared for it.
Well, I think as well as so many things can be disappointing. And especially if you're a writer, a baby writer, or someone that's doing it as a second career, we have a lot of that. Then you were used to a certain set of rules. You know, if you're a baby writer, then you've just come from school or college and everything's been pretty easy until that point, you know. And if you're a second career, then they had those rules again that you could work hard enough and people would understand and you would get somewhere. Whereas it's just not like that here. So people promise you things and then they don't do what they say they're going to do. And so you have to understand that you can, it's a weird thing though, because I do still think you need to celebrate all the time to keep your morale up. So the fact is that someone says, I want to option your project. You should be like, whoa! You know, you should literally like run around your front room. You should call all your friends. You should, if you drink, have a beer. If you don't drink, have a liqueur. It's just not an advert for liqueur. You know, do something to go like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Someone has realized my work, seen it and liked it, and that's wonderful. And then just get back to work. Because until it's actually signed, the contract is signed, until the money has gone over, till even they've started principal photography, until principal photography has stopped, till it's in the editing room, till it's all done, it doesn't even really exist.
Until you're at the premiere. Watching it on a screen or on your home screen at a digital premiere nowadays, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I know it's shocking for people to listen to, but here in Hollywood, people do exaggerate sometimes. And they lie straight up and they tell you they're going to do something and they don't. And the first few times that happens to you, you're just like, wow, this sucks. And it's rough. It's a rough go of it. No question.
I think it's because everyone's trying to kind of push each other away, push up off each other. And this is, I don't mean it sounds so cynical, but it's so hard to get a movie made that you're like, well, if I get someone attached, then maybe someone will then put the money up. So you kind of like, you lie to both parties to say that this person's attached, so do you want to put the money? And then you go, this person's put the money up, so do you want to be attached? And there's that kind of
chicken and egg.
Yeah, that really I think can be that's where it can all fall apart, because actually nothing is really set in stone until it's set in stone. And like we say, that's when it's all done. So I think you have to find ways to make it almost like a game for yourself. So it's more lighthearted. I think to kind of stay in a place of it would be great if that happens, but it's not going to ruin my life. You know, so that's what you need, lots of other stuff. I think the other thing to remember in this business is that you do need friends, family, hobbies, you know, other bits of your life to fill you up, because this, whatever this is never going to be enough. And so when you're let down, you still have other things. You go like, well, I can go to the beach. It's okay. I can stop writing for a day. I can do that. I can go out for dinner with my lovely partner. I can do something that makes me remember that I am a human being living on the planet. And this is just one of the things I do. However, you have to have a passion for it, but it is still one of the things you do.
That was the biggest mistake. One of the biggest mistakes I made coming up is that my entire identity was associated with being a filmmaker and being a director. Like that was my whole life. And to a certain extent, you have to kind of be that obsessive, especially at the beginning. You have to be. But that balance that you and I are talking about is it's only because of age. You know, we've been around the block. Hey, we've been around the block a little bit. It's like, you know, to speak, what you just said was so eloquent and wise. I don't hear 20-year-olds speaking like that, generally speaking. I mean, it happens every once in a while, but very rarely. So that is just, you just got to kind of go through it and you realize this. So hopefully people listening who are that age can take these notes and understand that I know you're trying hard to break through and I'm writing and this, but if you completely attach your identity to the craft of screenwriting or of filmmaking or being in this business, you will never, ever be happy. I don't care if you win an Oscars, because I've spoken to Oscar winners who've won the Oscar and then they're like, now what? Because, if you don't win the Oscar the next year, I'm a failure. Like, how crazy is this? Things like that. So you have to have a balance in life. And I'm so blessed to have a family that balanced me, because when I was young, it was first 10 years. It was just, that's all it was. But I was very, very depressed, very unhappy, because it was just this kind of high and low, constantly. And you never had this baseline. It was just constantly highs and lows. So you'd be so happy one day and you would crash the next because that guy lied to you. Or the financing fell through, which was never really going to happen anyway, because it was just some kid with a trust fund who said, oh, mommy's not going to give me the money this week. So, these are the things.
The human condition, though, is next, isn't it? It's like next. So you get there and you think, oh my God, I would be so happy if I moved to Hollywood. You move to Hollywood, you go like, okay, what's next? I'll be so happy if someone read my script. Next. Then they want it. And you kind of lose track of that moment when you were a little person just wanting to move to Hollywood, and being able to look back and think, actually, I've come so far and I'm doing so well. And am I enjoying this process? That is what it should be. Am I taking a moment each day to be grateful and just to say, wow, I feel like being a storyteller is one of the best jobs on earth. I mean, I know it's not easy, but getting to dig into the human idea, getting to tell stories about love and triumph and changing the world. I mean, what an amazing thing to do. I think there are lots of jobs where people are just earning a paycheck, and I respect them so much, because that's hard just to do that, just to do something for the paycheck. Whereas with a story, you actually get to go, like, disappear into your mind and imagine a different way for yourself and for others. And I just think it's such a privilege to be here, and so enjoy it in this process. Really pat yourself on the back more often than not. Take a stop and go like, God, this is amazing. I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad I'm doing this. And even when it's rubbish, it's just showing me how good it's going to feel when it's great.
And I want to point something out that you just said, the process. I think that that's where so many screenwriters fail, is that they don't enjoy the process. They only are looking at the outcome. And they're putting so much pressure on their work and their art that it can never live up to it. I used to do that constantly with my work. When I would release a short film, I'm like, this is the one that's going to blow me up. This is the one that Steven Spielberg is going to see, and he's going to come down from Mount Hollywood, tap me on the shoulder, and is like, now you shall do Jurassic Park 7. Now, like, that was and when it didn't do that, which it doesn't and it can't, and the people, and I've spoken to the people that has happened to, by the way, and every one of them never expected that, nor never thought it was going to happen. They're like, I was just making a short film, and all of a sudden someone from Hollywood showed up and they're like, hey, do you want to make the feature version of that? And here's a couple million. Like, literally that conversation. They never said, oh, this is the thing that's going to blow me up. No one ever said that. One of the famous mythical stories is El Mariachi, which is Robert Rodriguez's, and people still talk about that movie as the, like, well, he did a movie for $7,000, and we can get into all that another time. But he was making that movie, and everyone was like, oh, he was making that movie to get found. No, he was making that movie for the Spanish VHS market, and happened to drop it off at a friend of his who worked as the assistant to an agent. That agent happened to be the biggest directing agent in Hollywood. He saw it, but it wasn't. And when he were going to release El Mariachi, he's like, no, give me the money to remake it. I don't want to. This was just, I was just playing. I don't want people to see this. And that was the thing. So writers have to understand that as well, that you have to enjoy the process. And the moment that I started to enjoy writing or enjoy what I do on a daily basis and never put an outcome towards it, I became so much happier.
Yeah, it's like everything in life, isn't it? It's like if you're trying too hard, is it worth the cost of that? So if you're looking for love, if you want to be in love, don't look for it. It's that same kind of thing. You do it because you're having a nice moment telling the story. And then keep telling them. And I think that's the other thing about, I think we started with that, is that I think you should really be thinking about ideas and writing out the ideation, really spending some time every week, every month to just think, okay, reading articles, what's exciting me right now, what is kind of like happening in the world that is important but still relates to me and is relevant to my life and the things that I care about, and just say start writing ideas out about like, so what would happen if these people who I'm trying to think of an example, had cat ears landed on the moon, and it's not a great one. It would be a very niche market, but start thinking about what ifs and ideas and stuff like that. So you're always trying to generate new ideas that are relevant to what's happening socially right now, and that are also kind of still touch who you are, so that you're not stuck as well on just the grind of this one script that maybe you're working on that you're madly in love with, but might need a little bit of time away. It doesn't mean to say that you get writing on 15 things at once, but be focused on the scripts you're writing on, but then take some time to write some other ideas, so that if you are ever in pitching this fabulous script that you're in love with and they ask you what else you have, then you have 10, 15 other ideas ready to go that they can talk to you about. Because as we know, even if they're only going to buy one of the scripts from you, they're actually buying you, the writer, rather than just the script. And so you want to show that you're that kind of writer that's full of ideas and really can be flexible and move with them. And if they start talking, you can start riffing back. And, they want to, it's like a marriage. You're going to get in bed with them for a long time if they take your script and let you start to make it.
I was talking to a screenwriter the other day, a very successful screenwriter, and he's like, when I went to a pitch, this is what I did. I would have the 8-minute pitch for my big script that I loved. And then they would go, that's great. What do you have? What else do you have? Then he would go into a 2-minute pitch for another script he had. And he was like, boom, 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 boom. He goes, yeah, that's great. What else do you have? Then he does this thumbnail 20-second pitch. They're like, that's the one. And you just never know. He's like, all right, that's the one you want to buy? Okay, well, we'll sell you that one. So you have to have multiple things. And I always tell screenwriters as well that if you're working on a script for 2-3 years and it's just one script and that's the only thing you're writing on, you are not a professional. You're a hobbyist at that point. You're not a professional. Professional writers write and write a lot and have multiple scripts. I know you don't have to have multiple scripts going at the same time, though I find it to be helpful to be jump back and forth, sometimes maybe between 2 or 3, maybe.
Yeah.
Not 15, but 2 or 3. But you should always have product and ideas. So you need to walk into meetings with minimum of 3 ideas or scripts ready to rock and roll, if not 5 or 6. And you're really not going to be any good at writing until you're probably into your 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, if not 20th screenplay, unless you're a prodigy, and they do come, but that's the outlier, and you can't really, hey, well, Quentin Tarantino, I'm like, stop it. Stop right there. Stop. Well, Aaron Sorkin, stop. Don't put your name in the same sentence with them, because they're a different level than you are, and it's not better or worse. It's just at a different place in their career than you are, and the kind of talent. It's like, well, Mozart started. Look, no, like I picked up the piano. Well, Mozart was 7. I'm like, really, he was 7. Really? Are you comparing yourself to one of the greatest geniuses of all time? But that's the insanity of screenwriters and filmmakers.
I know. But the good news is you can get better at it.
Yes.
The good news is that you can get better at it, and that actually it's not as ageist as other bits of the profession. So you can get better, and it doesn't matter how old you are in the same way, unless they're looking. I was talking to someone the other day, a millennial. Actually, no, she's probably the younger than that. She's probably 22. They're not millennials anymore, are they?
No, they're the new. I forgot the new. Yeah, not even millennials. I don't know what that new generation is.
The new one. Anyway, the new one.
We're so old. We are so old, Felicity. We are ancient. We are ancient. We are dating ourselves. Let's just go watch some.
So sorry.
Let's go to Blockbuster, rent a VHS, and just watch a movie tonight. I mean, seriously, we're that old.
She was talking to me about dialogue, and she was like, oh God, all these millennials writing this dialogue for our generation. And I was like, eek! I mean, because I was like,
wow, oh jeez, that hurt me.
Stabbed me in the heart. Ah! I mean, just like, oh gosh. And I was like, yeah, so then okay, then I think you've got to, she's a writer too. So I was like, then you need to get out there and actually all these people in rooms need to be going, like, who are hiring for rooms need to be going, okay, I need to find me some baby writers, because we think we know how people are speaking and they're not speaking that way. So let's actually get some authenticity in the room. And I think that's something I've really enjoyed this year. COVID and just previously to COVID, this whole kind of thing is this search for authenticity in writing and in rooms and in TV shows and in features that you're seeing old white dudes kind of writing young women and stuff like that. I feel like it's great that things are changing.
Yeah, no, there's no question. And you're starting to see more and more diversity in movies and television shows. And it's not that the old white guy story is not good. It's just that's all we had. We need to have other points of view because that's not the country we live in. And having those other points of view are fantastic. And I'm really glad that that's happening now. And giving opportunities to, being a screenwriter in the 90s, unless you're a white dude, it was rough. I remember coming up as a Latino in Miami, and they said, if you direct a Spanish commercial, they won't allow you to do English language anymore. Because I would then be put in the box of, he's a Latino director, does Latin American or Latino commercials. Because God forbid, if I can aim a camera at a Spanish speaking person, I can't aim a camera at an English speaking person, or I don't even get me started on that whole world. But that was the fear. And I had done some Spanish commercials, and I'm like, I can't put them on my reel because I would get ousted from the room. It was just insane. It was an insane time.
I'm glad that the multi-hyphenate has become a thing, though. I think though that has become, it didn't used to be, and I think everyone was very much more, if you're an actor, you're an actor, if you're a writer, you're a writer, if you're a filmmaker, you're a filmmaker, you're a director. You weren't allowed to do all those things. It's like you're almost being greedy, whereas now actually they want you to do those things. But it also means that you have to, as a screenwriter or a filmmaker or anyone in this industry, treat yourself like a business. You are a business person. And I've been talking to people recently, and I think even going so far as to become a producer yourself as a screenwriter, so you can hire yourself as a producer for scripts if they're going to get made by somebody, so that you can be fired off the script as a screenwriter, but that you're still on in some capacity as a producer, is something to think of. So everything you're doing now when you're trying to get your script out there, think of it as a business person, not as a creative. And that's why you kind of need your head split down the middle, I would say, and I'm sure you would agree, is that half is business and half is creative, because this business half has to be making the deals, learning how to build a pitch deck, being good on the phone, selling something, learning be able to what looks like. That is the business side, and the other creative side still has to go like, I'm going to tell this amazing story about things I love. It's like the two halves.
Well, like I always say, there's the word show and the word business, and the word business has twice as many letters as the word show. And there is a reason. Yes, it does. One needs the other, but without the money, there ain't no show. Because they'll put on a show. It could suck, but they'll put on a show. But the money is what really is going. Now, I was talking to somebody the other day about branding, and they were a screenwriting team, and a very successful screenwriting team from the 80s and 90s. And I was talking to them, and they were saying that they branded themselves in town as the rewrite guys. They would be known as the guys who would come in to troubled projects and rewrite these projects, and in specific genres. So they did romantic comedies and action, which was weird. It was like so they would add a little bit of comedy to action projects and things like that. And I think as a screenwriter, even at a certain level, you need to think about branding yourself in the business, because the business wants to throw you in a box. They need to throw you in a box for their small minds to be able to deal with you, because there's just so many things. If you do everything, I don't know where to put you. So you need to kind of find a niche at the beginning. You could venture out later, but at the beginning you need to find a niche and focus on that niche and become a brand on that. And it could be you're the dialogue person. I can do rewrites. I'm really good at, subplots. There's things as far as getting work, not selling the $1 million spec, working as a writer. I think that's so powerful because every major screenwriter you could think of, they had their niche. I mean, Quentin was rewriting Crimson Tide. And you can tell the scene that he rewrote because it's so clearly him, because Denzel Washington in a nuclear sub is talking about Silver Surfer. So I'm like, oh, that's the Quentin Tarantino stuff. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. But he was brought in to punch up dialogue when he was starting out because that was his brand. Would you agree about branding, and how do screenwriters, if you agree, brand themselves in the business?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We talk to our writers on our development slate, and the way we ask them to talk about themselves is that if you were a Hollywood producer, because they're all producers from anywhere, quite frankly, but you were clicking through and you were looking at your profile, so the kind of like the bio of you, the story of you, what kind of writer would they get if they hired you? So are you someone who is fascinated by familial relationships and how they explode and how life can be different if you come from a blended family? Or do you like to focus on dialogue and comedy and unpicking stories and from narratives that we've already heard? You know what I mean? So whatever because I feel, again, it's that thing we started with in the idea that knowing who you are and what your pressure points are and what your story is, that is your brand. So you have to get very kind of clinical, I think, and dissect and go into your work and go like, what are the things I keep talking about that actually, if someone was going through and they went, I want to punch up the dialogue in a family script with a breakup, and you're kind of like, I'm really interested in relationships and breaking up, and kind of, then they've got that for you. I think if you're particularly interested in horror or something like that, and you say like, I seem to be drawn towards these kind of genres, then to put that in as well. But I feel like how you tell a story and the kind of beats of it, the heart of it, even in these different genres, will probably remain pretty similar, because that, as you said, is your special sauce. So I guess what you're asking for the brand is to find your special sauce and articulate it correctly.
Write it, articulate it, if you will.
Yeah.
and promote yourself that way. And you're right. I think one of the bigger mistakes that a lot of early or baby screenwriters, as you like to call them, do is that they're like, oh, I write horror, romantic comedies, actions, and sci-fi. Like, you're done. There's no way. No one's going to hire you because they don't want a generalist. They want a specialist. When it's writing, would you agree that they're like, I'm an action producer. I want a guy or a gal who just loves action and writes action. And if there's a little humor in it, all the better, great. But I need someone who's focused on action, or I need someone who's focused in horror and thrillers, or I need someone who's focused in sci-fi or in romantic comedies or comedies. Do you agree?
I feel like it's got a bit, because of much more genre busting, and I think genres themselves have become a bit more fluid. But I think it's that thing about, as you were kind of saying, is you can't be an expert in everything. And if you are trying to build up your career, you should be trying to find producers, directors, managers, these kind of people that like people like you. So in a way, you want to kind of work out what your voice is, what your brand is, so that then you can be very targeted in your approach if you are thinking about producers you'd like to work with or that might like to work with you. So what do you have in your portfolio that is like work that they have produced? And then see if you can find a way to get to them. I mean, it's always trying to find kind of roads in, but that, I think, helps you decide who your brand is and what your brand is, and then where you can target your approach. A manager, if they tends to, I would say, probably tries to cover all bases, but see if there's a hole in their roster. So they've got a comedy person, they've got an action person, they've got a TV person, but they haven't got someone that's really focused on horror. Then maybe you could approach, that would be your approach, is that I really like these interesting characters that are in difficult situations. I particularly like horror that's psychological rather than gruesome. I see that you have done your other writers on your roster do this and this. I feel like this is maybe a place where I could fit in your roster if you're looking right now. So I think branding will help you across the board in your sales pitch.
Can you also now myth bust this concept that all I need is an agent and my life is going to be better? All I need is a manager to sell me, and then they will see my genius and the millions will roll in. Can you please bust this myth for anyone listening?
I always say there's a reason why they take 10 and you get 90, and it's because even if you get a manager, at maximum, they're going to do 10% of the work and you do 90%.
That's great. That's great. I love that. I've never heard that one. That's great.
So, I mean, like the idea that they're going to take you on and then you're going to sit by the phone and it's going to ring. And it's the same for actors. I mean, that is not going to happen. The best thing you could do if you were going to meet with managers or try and get in touch with them or try and, there's a whole thing, Twitter, follow them on Twitter, do your homework on IMDb Pro. This is not an advert for IMDb Pro, but find out, who their writers are, is that you nowadays can find out a lot about who they are and what they want. So that when you approach them and you go like, actually, I think I might be a right fit for you. And I've done some homework as to where I think my projects might land in the industry. They're like, thank God, I don't have to think about that. They've already given me, if they like you and they like your work, they're like, wow, I already have a starting point. I don't have to think about where I'm going to send them, because if I agree with some of these ideas, then it's taken some of the work away from me already. Managers are looking, like most people, to do as little as they can for as much return as they can. And depending on where you are in the roster, again, they've got lots of people at the top that they have to be seen to be doing a lot more for. If you've just signed with them, you are literally the last person there. Or they might give you a bit of a burst at the beginning where they're like, I'll get you around town. And you have this kind of flurry at the beginning. If nothing happens then it will be crickets and nothing will happen ever again. So this idea that they are going to look after you and change your world is absolute rubbish. But it does give you a tick. It gives you an authenticity. It gives you someone else has chosen you for when you can then go out into the world and approach other people. And you can go like, well, I'm signed with this manager, so therefore let's have this conversation.
Yeah, and I noticed you kept saying manager and you didn't say the word agent very often in that conversation, because it's very true. Managers are a little bit more open to nurturing careers, slightly more. Agents are mercenaries. They're absolute mercs.
It's totally the business. Yeah, it's just the business.
And for screenwriters, you have to understand that the agent is only going to sign you if they believe they can make money with you. And the easier the money, the better. You just won Sundance, I'll sign you because I know I'll be able to probably flip you really quickly and make a little quick cash. You're a commodity. That's what it is. You look at these huge movie stars from the 80s and 90s. They're not at CAA anymore. They're not at William Morris anymore. They're at second tier because their career is not making 20 million. He's not making, or she's not making 20 million a pop anymore. So it's business. It's business where a manager will kind of a little bit more. But yeah, you're right. The water bottle tour, they might throw you on the water bottle tour. And if there's no bites on that shotgun, it's a shotgun approach essentially.
Yeah.
Like just throw you out there. See if anyone bites. If someone bites, great. If no one bites, okay, let's see what happens. And we'll hold them around or hold her around for a little bit to see what happens. But it's the case. And like you said, the more of a complete package you can bring to them as a writer, the more likely you're going to get. So if you are a prolific writer who has now not only written screenplays, but has multiple selling books, self-published books on Amazon, you have a website, you have maybe even a small following from your books, you've got a business, you've packaged all this together, you bring something like that to them, they're going to take that writer much more than the writer who's just like, this is the one, forget it. It's over.
Well, it's a nice idea, but it's just, again, it's that the manager only has so much time too in their day. Right. And they are trying to make money themselves, So if you can help them make money from you, then they're going to be like, thank you very much. I've been looking for you. And
I need 10 more of you.
Yeah. And also, I think it's just to empower yourself. I mean, we talked about this earlier, Alex and I, the actor has nothing until they start writing, and if you're a screenwriter, in a way, you're waiting to be picked. So how can you help yourself? You write a lot and then you do the research so that if something does come along, you are ready. If you're in a lift somehow, if that ever goes in, elevator, that's the word, that you can pitch your project. You know where it would land in streaming or TV. Producers that might be interested in it, and you've already done this work. And if someone's saying, like, "What are you doing that now?" I go, "Well, I'm doing this, and I think it'd be right for HBO Max, but I'm just wait. My manager's speaking to a few people over there." Then suddenly you can speak with authorities, and they're like, "Oh, HBO Max is looking at it." Someone's, then because everyone likes to hear those kind of trigger words that then maybe means that they should be interested in having a look themselves. And it means that you have something to hang on to rather than just, this is my art and I'm writing. It gives you
You're providing value. And that's the key to any career, anything you do in life is to provide value to the other person. Every relationship that you have, you're providing value. So many screenwriters, do you know I get pitched? I get pitched screenplays. They send me, this is how, and I've said it 100 times on the show, don't send me a screenplay. I'm not a producer. I'm not going to produce your screenplay. I know. And I will get cold emails with query letters with a screenplay attached, which of course gets deleted instantly. Yeah. And I'm like, why? You've done no research. You just saw me talking to some producer and you think that I'm going to read your screenplay and go, oh, who would be, I'm going to reach out to this guy that I just talked to because obviously, no, just do your homework. I mean, and that's the other thing, so many screenwriters don't know who do you approach and how do you know who you approach? I always tell them, IMDb Pro. IMDb Pro, IMDb Pro, IMDb Pro is your best investment, great ROI. And like you've been saying, find out what they're looking for, who's on their roster, what kind of projects that they're into. Are you going to pitch a romantic comedy to Blumhouse? Which I'm sure they got them. I promise you they get them. I promise you they get them.
Well, I think you just want to set your best foot forward. This is just so that you have more of a chance. And I think sometimes it's difficult because, again, it's your own work. It depends. Some people are egomaniacs and they're like, it's my work, you've got to listen to me. But I tend to find that they tend not to be the best writers. It's the people
Shocking.
that are more...
Yeah. Shocking.
Yeah. It's the people who are a bit more humble and a bit more sensitive and find this difficult. Try and imagine it's your best friend. I don't know, call your writer self... So I guess it's Beyonce, isn't it? It's Beyonce and her kind of alter ego. She has her stage persona.
The Queen Bee, yes.
Yeah, the Queen Bee. So I guess basically do that for yourself is that you have the writer who is a sensitive human, has to kind of expose their innards so that we can have enjoyment from it. And then you have the business person that goes like, okay, I'm going to take that sensitive little soul and I'm going to work out the best way to move them forward and use a different part of your brain, call yourself somebody different. I'm sure people have actually I think there's all those kind of old movies where they were like, hey, I'm here for the meeting. And then they go like, oh, I'm here. They pretend to be the agent and then ring them up. You don't have to do that, but I think psychologically it's probably worth doing that. So treat your writer friend as your best friend and try and say, if you were giving them advice, what would you do? And he would be like, be brave, throw your hat in the ring, enter that contest, try and send a cold email, see who you might want to work with, really give them advice as you would a best friend, because I think that it's so hard when it's just little you and your work. But actually, people are looking for story all the time. And it is so hard to find good ones. A good script is honestly, it's not even a needle in a haystack. It's a needle in a haystack in a hayfield. And in somewhere where there's lots of hay. I mean, it's huge. So hard to find a good script. And an original voice. I mean, if you have something, if you think, oh my goodness, I read a script the other day that I really liked because it was about two young homeless kids, them living on the streets, and then an incident happened, and then how they get off the streets. I've never really seen that, and it was written from such a authentic point of view, and it gave the main characters had things that were extraordinary about them, even though they were dirt poor and living on the street and in hardship, and that I was like, okay, this is good. This is interesting. So whatever your story is, your uniqueness, that point of view, if you have something original, honestly, someone will want to read it and will want to make it.
And I think you mentioned this a little earlier in our conversation in regards to the pressure that you put on art, but like the all I need is this, and then this will happen, kind of thing. Like I just need to win the nickels, and I just need to get an agent, or I just need Steven Spielberg or Chris Nolan to see my work, and they'll come on and shepherd me through, and these kind of things. And I think screenwriters as well as filmmakers need to break apart from that. You gotta get out of that mindset, because it is all about the process and enjoying the process and enjoying the road, because this is going to be a painful look. You've chosen a very interesting career path as a screenwriter. It is wonderful. It is beautiful. You get the privilege to tell stories, but it is not an easy path for any writing. Writing has never been easy for when it was Charles Dickens. Shakespeare had a rough go of it. He wasn't considered Shakespeare when he was writing. He was just another dude trying to get a play off the ground. So, and to understand that humility that you must have, because if you are not humble, this business will humble you to your knees.
Oh my goodness.
It will humble you. Anytime I see one of those egomaniacs, which I've run across, oddly enough, a handful of times in my business, in my time in the business, I always say to myself, "Don't worry, the business will take care of them." I've literally had producers in the room like, "I'll see you at next year's Oscars with this film." Like, it's just such delusion. And I think when you run into people like that, and I think this is an interesting conversation to have, when you run into delusional people in this business, on every level, from the screenwriter to the producer to the financier to the actor, whoever, that is obviously a defense mechanism that they've created for themselves to survive this gauntlet that is the film industry. They don't understand yet that that's not the way to do it, but it's a defense. How would you, if you have to deal with someone like this, which I'm sure you have and I have as well, what advice would you give to deal with delusional people? And by the way, if you don't know any delusional people, you are the delusional person. Like I always say, like, how many people here know an angry or bitter screenwriter or angry and bitter filmmaker? And everyone raises their hand. Like, if you didn't raise your hand, you're the angry and bitter screenwriter that everyone else looks at. So,
oh my gosh!
But it's true, isn't it?
Oh. I think you're right, though. I think I try and look at it like this: that anyone that is being either mean or delusional or horrible or all that kind of stuff comes from something that they've got going on.
Oh,
it's something to do with them. It's actually nothing to do with you. And the fact that you're at the kind of like, I don't know, receiving the blunt stick of it, them behaving so badly. I think it's just to try and remove yourself from that situation and get to what they are really angry about or delusional about, or so you kind of try and undercut and keep asking questions. So you kind of go like, so is it this? Do you know what I mean? So you kind of like, so you've got the money. So where is the money coming from? Okay, so is it in the bank? Do you know what I mean? So you keep asking questions that kind of unpeel the delusion. I think not in a mean way, but just in a kind of like, so I don't understand. It's like it's really kind of getting to the truth of it. Because if you ask for the truth and ask enough questions, I think you can then kind of like, they'll either go like, oh, or they'll like admit something, or they'll kind of storm out, and then, and then it's kind of God anyway, isn't it? But I think remaining in your own strength, so not kind of getting caught up in what they've got going on. So like, does that seem real to you? If it's the same thing, isn't it? If a deal seems too good to be true, is.
Now, with that said, I'm gonna tell you a story really quickly. If I told you that there was a producer who said, we're going to get $1 million for this project, and I go, where's the money coming from? Oh, there's this guy who married a rich woman in South Africa, let's say, and he gets a stipend of $1 million a month to play with as his walking around money.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And $1 million is no big deal. And he really just wants to be part of the filmmaking process. Give him a part in the movie, a small little cameo. He wants to go to the red carpet, all this kind of stuff. And the director's a first-time director. The cinematographer has never shot a feature. And we will probably have a couple of real actors involved, like faces and maybe even an Oscar nominee. Do you believe that thing happened?
I hope it did, because it sounds amazing. But oh my God, what an amazing group of things to happen all in one go. Did it happen?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I wasn't the director, and I won't say any more about the project because I don't want to bring the project out, but it is in my past. I was part of the project in a small capacity. That's exactly how it happened.
Was it good?
No, no. Nothing in that conversation stated that it was going to be good.
No, but I mean, again, I'm hopeful. It seemed like a dream come true. I wondered if somehow it then blossomed into
an Oscar-winning. No, nothing. No, it was a complete and utter disaster. The only thing that held it together was the cast, and it was also at a different time period. It was, I think, I'm not going to say the dates, but it was at a time period where it was easier to sell international based off of talent. Nowadays, it's not as easy. But so. There's those stories, and you can imagine me. I was just like, why is this happening? And why doesn't anyone give it to me? Why hasn't someone given me the $1 million? Obviously, I'm a much better pack. Don't they understand my genius? Like I always tell people, I'm the humblest guy you'll ever meet, like the humblest of the humble. No, but of all the humble people, I'm the humblest. But
I'm best at being humble.
I'm the best at being humble. Number one. Best at everybody else. It's ridiculous. But so you see things like that. And I worked a lot in the post-production business. So I would see these stories come in and it would get me so angry. I was an angry and bitter filmmaker for so long. Oh my God, so long. And I know in the screenwriting world as well, you see these projects get done and you see these paydays and you're just like, why did that person get that? Why? But you can't look at things like that. You just got to go, You're on your path, you're on your journey, and just keep going down. And I promise you, something good will eventually happen if you do that. If you enjoy the process, you're winning right away.
Exactly. You're already winning. And I always kind of think you can reframe everything. So like you can kind of go like, oh, why did they get that money? And you go, and it's so terrible. And you go like, well, this is inspiring me. So I can go like, they got that money and it's terrible and mine's going to be better than that. You know, I think everything that really annoys you, if you can take a minute to step back from it and just kind of flip it. I feel like you should do this in life anyway. Just try and flip it. Go like, oh, I didn't get that role. And I think it was Jennifer Aniston. She was up for an advert or something. And she was down to the last two, that, you know, that heavy pencil thing. And she was going she didn't get it. And she was absolutely devastated because it was going to like be, I don't know, $5,000 because they used to pay, or maybe even $15,000 because they used to pay quite well back then. And she was going away filming and everything. And she didn't get it. And then she called in for the Friends interview. And it would have been while she was away filming, and she got that role instead. And you have to think about how different her life has been for not getting that interview.
I do believe that there is a plan for us now we're going into spiritual world and the destiny and all that kind of stuff. I think we do control our own destiny. I think we do definitely have to put the work in. But there's just forces, man. There's just things that just you can't see things like, you know, the Friends gang how they all got together. Like it just so happenstance. It was so perfectly put together. And they're making hundreds of millions of dollars 20 years later still, and they're still making money off that show. All those kind of things, there is destiny. There's just no question. I was listening to, I had the producer of Pretty Woman on the other day, and he was talking to us about Julia Roberts. And he wanted Julia Roberts to be on the show, on the movie, and Gary Marshall wanted Julia Roberts, but Richard Gere had to sign off. So Julia Roberts, this is Julia Roberts basically, I think, after Mystic Pizza. So she was not Julia Roberts. She was, I think, 20, whatever. I think she's like 20, 21. Right. She was a baby. She goes to his apartment. Gary's with her. Gary leaves the room. This is the way the story goes. Gary leaves the room. He's like, I got to go to the bathroom so he could get to know her. And then like 15 minutes later, he still hasn't come back. He calls up Richard on the phone and goes, Richard, what do you think? While she's in the room. And while he's on the phone, Julia Roberts writes on a Post-it, writes a little note on the Post-it, and then shows it to him. And it says, please say yes. And Richard, of course, fell in love with her at that moment. And the rest, as they say, is history. But that was that's fate. Like you can't. And how Julia Roberts was even considered for that role. So many stars had to align to get there. There is that. But
I think it's the Friends thing. Sorry to interrupt you. I would say with Friends is that all that money didn't make them happy. Not everyone.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
So actually, having a happy life is more valuable than being an Oscar winner, or the best screenwriter,
Amen.
Or the most famous actress, or the most, being happy with yourself and with who you are as a human.
Be careful what you wish for, because it might just come true. And people listening like, oh, I want to be a famous this, or I want to, direct that, or I want to write this. They don't understand what that entails and what trade-offs you have to do. If you want to be the biggest movie star in the world, there is some trade-offs. You want to write on a studio project, there is some trade-offs.
Yeah.
You want to direct a Marvel movie, there is some trade-offs, things that you don't understand because you've never sat in that chair. And I've been blessed by being able to talk to a lot of these writers and directors who do sit in these chairs. So I hear all the stories. So when Kevin Feige does call me for Avengers Part 5, I'm ready.
You've done your prep.
I'm ready. So Kevin, if you're listening, I'll take the meeting. I'll always take the meeting. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions to ask all my guest Felicity. What are three screenplays that every screenwriter should read?
Get Out. It's the one that's just it's Emily Blunt and John Krasinski.
Quiet Place.
Quiet Place, yes. A Quiet Place. You should read that because I think what I love about that is that's so imaginative about how they put it on the page. They kind of did something different. One of Jim Hart's ones, I would either go Dracula or Hook, one of those two probably.
Jim, a friend of the show, Jim. And the Hook, God, the stories of Hook and Dracula. Oh God, they're amazing. Yes, all great choices. Also, I wanted to kind of highlight what you guys do over at the ICA. So you're helping screenwriters as well as we are. And what are you doing? What are the resources you guys have for screenwriters? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. I'm the VP of Development for the International Screenwriters Association. It was started by someone who was an actor turned screenwriter who moved from Chicago to LA and was like, my goodness, everyone wants to take my money and no one is doing what they said they were going to do. So he just started an online resource for screenwriters so that you could check stuff out. It's a place of community for screenwriters. It's a place where you can put your profile up, you can put your screenplays, you can put posters, sizzles. So you can make it a place with other screenwriters where you can completely put your brand in one area. We have producers that are signed up to the site, and they definitely go through and look at talent and look at screenwriters. You can promote your success on it. And then it's also full of the other half of the business. So that's you and your craft and your career. There's a lot of teaching elements of it too. But there's also the business side. So we have, it's called ISA Insider, where Movie Maker variety of all the news comes through, so you can have a look at that. There's pro tips and tricks about what's going on in the industry, red carpet interviews, interviews like such as yourself that actually go and speak to directors and producers and see what they're doing and how they found their way in the world. So it's always it's a hub really for you to find people like you and information you might need. I also run a development slate of 172 writers, which is a top tier writer pool of scripts I found through contests and referrals and success stories, just brilliant success stories. I love following people who are doing well and telling people about it. That's the other thing. If you are doing well, not to be obnoxious, but let people know. Let people know that said no to you in the past. Let people know that helped you on the way. Say thank you. We all like to feel that it reminds me that we're all connected. And in some way, even a pizza takes hundreds of people to make it,
You're right.
To plant the corn, to grow the corn, to mill the corn, Yeah, I mean, we're all so interconnected. I think COVID showed us that more than ever, is that we actually all need each other. So to be in a place where you can go like, okay, we're all here, gang. And when times are difficult and when you have those moments where you're dealing with delusional people or things are down, to have these other people that will lift you up and say like, I really believe in you and, keep going.
Now in England, do they have pizza made of corn? Because I wasn't aware that corn was an ingredient in pizza. So I just wanted to clarify, because I haven't been to England. I'm not sure if that's the thing. I just want to be prepared if there is corn pizza, not to look like an outsider.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I couldn't let it go.
What's flour made out of? I'm like, wheat. Oh, God damn it. Yeah, you're right. I'm like,
as you were talking, like, did she just say corn? I can't let that go.
Grow the wheat.
Don't grow the wheat.
I'm talking about the tortilla pizzas that everyone.
That's very LA. It's very LA. It's very LA with the tortilla pizzas. What advice would you give a screenwriter trying to break into the business today?
Find your people. I think go on Facebook, join all the screenwriting groups, go on Twitter, go on Instagram, do all the social media stuff, and find all the people that are out there doing it. Hashtag Screenwriter is massive on Twitter. You need to be following that. And from there, you will find lots of screenwriters and showrunners and producers, because they're all looking on there too. It became, again, an amazing, when the industry changed, it became a place for people to find each other. So, and I also think it's a place where you can celebrate. So if someone has got a new project out and you've seen that in the trades, because you're now reading the trades as part of your job, you can then congratulate them on Twitter or Facebook or wherever. And they do notice if you keep saying, and if you say something smart or if you're funny. The other thing to do in those Facebook groups is to help others, so that if someone says, I need a script reading or I need a logline looking at, be one of those people that offers advice that does help out, not to your own detriment, to avoid writing, but do it enough so that you're a person that's part of the community that's actually trying to make this stuff happen. Yeah. Then I think you just have to kind of enter contests and fellowships and look for grants and see if there's a little area in your hometown, if you're not in LA, that has projects that they're working on. Volunteer on, find people that are writing shorts or producing shorts. Film schools, volunteer, go to be on set. You can learn a lot from being on set, I think. One about how actors and directors work with each other with lines, but also just how the whole process is, so that you can be a better screenwriter. I think really immersing yourself in the job. Then read all the time, read other people's scripts, read scripts whilst watching the movie, see how much they changed it. If your TV is your thing, kind of get into TV scripts, and then start putting pitches together. Start looking at pitch decks. thinking about, so you actually act as a producer for yourself. If you were going to create this, because it's probably in your mind, so then how can you put it on the page? What's the tone? Who would you have in it as your dream cast? Why now? Why you, this writer? Put that all in the pitch deck. Even if you never send it anywhere, which you should, but even if you don't, it means that you can talk about it more eloquently if someone asks you about it. Practice your pitches. If it's 10 minutes ones, your 2-minute one, your 1-minute one, as Alex was saying about that. And keep learning, don't give up, persevere, believe, and know that you have your own journey in this process. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. It's miserable and pointless.
Yes, and bitter. The bitter screenwriter or the bitter filmmaker.
Well, it just makes you feel horrible. What's the point in doing that? You know, it doesn't touch them at all. And you just going around going, it should have been me, it should have been me. And it's like, why? It doesn't make no sense. Be happy
right
for them and do something better.
Or just do something that they can't do. Do that thing that you can do and only you can do. Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Self-belief. I think that is the hardest one. And unfortunately, nothing in any aspect of your life works without it. You have to believe in yourself. You have to think that you're worthy. So self-worth, I think. And it's an ongoing process. I'd like to say I'm there, but I'm there on some days that, I was nervous about doing this. I'll beat myself up afterwards about times I stumbled over words, So it's a continuing, we're all a work in progress. So I guess remember that and let yourself off the hook about it. I haven't killed anybody yet, so I'm not a murderer. So there are worse things.
Exactly. And I've already forgotten about the corn pizza. Now,
oh my God, my name is Felicity Wren and I eat corn pizza.
I'm telling you, that is a Teenage Sleuth book series. Right now, you and I should collaborate. And last question, 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Okay. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Charlie. So good.
The only thing is I have to have 10 minutes afterwards to cry. I literally have to cry for 10 minutes afterwards because I'm so sad about my life choices and so happy about them at the same time. It's one of those things that, if you had to do it all again, would you? Yeah. Does it hurt like hell? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just, I love the imagination of it, the magic of it. I mean, I was going to then go, can I do 4?
Sure, absolutely.
Because then that leads me to the Truman Show. I'm a very big fan of Jim Carrey. I think he is underrated as an actor. He is a modern day Dick Van Dyke. Again, massive fan of his. Mm-hmm. I think he is so versatile and so talented, and people are. He was in a stereotype box for a while, but he is incredible. I think he's an amazing
Man in the Moon. Man in the Moon is all you have to say.
Yeah, Man in the Moon. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So those are my 2. I'm going to link those together, even though they're not the same. And then The Hours I just love because I really enjoyed Stephen Daldry's directing. I just think the script itself is so beautiful. I hadn't seen many pictures with 3 very dynamic and different female leads, who that ensemble was such an ensemble piece. And it was, I will never forget the image of Julianne Moore on the bed reading the book and the water just coming at her, feeling like she's drowning by being a housewife. And as someone who doesn't want to be a housewife, I really, really it really spoke to me. So The Hours, and the storytelling is beautiful and the acting is incredible. And then I think a bit more recent is Arrival, because oh my God, it's such a smart script. And when you understand what it's been doing with you at the end, how it's been messing with your mind, I was just blown away by the ingenuity of it and the stylishness, the exotic sophistication of it. And I also hate it when aliens are portrayed as the enemy, because I feel like it's another form of racism. It's all like, who's not you?
It's an alienism.
Yeah, it's an alienism, racism. It's this whole thing about keeping us divided. Anyone that's not you should be feared. And I feel like I love that about Arrival, is that it turned that on its head, and it gave us, and at the same time, humans were going to help them too. So it wasn't a case of we've come to rescue you. It was a partnership. So I really enjoyed that about it.
And where can people find out more about what you find about you and what you do over at ISA? ISA.
Well, you can find us at www.networkisa.org.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And I am on the website there. Basically, you can just go. It's a really kind of big website. You can go and have a bit of a poke around, have a look. There's so much free stuff on it. There is a $10 a month or $99 a year membership that puts you on a slightly, it's called the ISA Connect. It's a slightly more elevated membership. The rest of it is free. And that basically just means that you get 4 free contest entries a year, which is actually worth more than the fee you pay to be on it. And you have a few more things that are just for you, extra classes and stuff like that. But you can have a look. It's all free. Have a wander around. I'm there.
Very cool. Felicity, it's been a pleasure talking to you. We had a lot of fun. And I hope this episode helps a few screenwriters out there. And hopefully they're not crying, curled up in a corner somewhere in the fetal position after this conversation. I hope they are empowered to move forward with their dreams and their careers. So thank you so much for that.
It was such a pleasure to meet you. And I agree. It started off a bit negatively, but we're just kind of like laying the foundation before we said, this is what you can do instead to make it all okay.
Absolutely. I want to thank Felicity so much for coming on the show and dropping her knowledge bombs on the tribe today. If you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, including how to get a hold of Felicity at ISA, head over to the show notes at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv/130. And if you haven't already, head over to screenwritingpodcast.com, choose your favorite podcasting platform, subscribe, and leave a good review for the show. It truly helps us out a lot. And if you like the show, please recommend it. Share it with other screenwriters. I want this information to get out to as many screenwriters as humanly possible. Thank you again so much for listening, guys. As always, keep on writing, no matter what. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv.